Live? We're live. Hi all, how are we? Welcome to this panel of brilliant people. We're discussing parental mental health when raising a challenging child. So Ashly, we're not talking about partners. How are you?
Who are you asking?
Well, I just started talking to you, haven't I?
Okay, I'm good. It's Friday.
She don't listen.
Oh, whatever. I'll pretend to be the challenging child today. No, I'm good. It's Friday.
Exactly. Do you want to kick us off with this brilliant topic?
Me? Sure.
Well, you're homeschooling 7 kids, and didn't you say some of them have special needs?
No, they don't. I think it's more the teenager attitude, because they tend to be a lot like their mother. If that's good, bad, or indifferent, who knows? No, they are. We've got 6 here at home that we homeschool, and they all go through their moments of difficulty. I think like all kids do, where they. Sorry, my dogs are barking. Where they become very defiant, and don't like to cooperate, or comply, if you will, with certain requests. But I think as far as for me, when they can get into that mood, that attitude, I ask the questions. Do you need to eat something? Do you need to take a break? Okay, if you don't want to take a break, then I'm leaving. Like, I'm going for a walk because I need to separate myself from you right now. So I maintain my frustration levels. Otherwise, it turns into an argument and a yelling match, and it gets nowhere. So yeah, that's what I deal with.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is no break when you homeschool. There really isn't.
Well, and that's when I turn to Sarah. Hi and welcome. She mentions about a break when homeschool. Us as SCM parents, we don't know what a break is, do we?
No. And, our son will most likely, I mean, of course, we all hope as parents that they'll live an independent life someday. But my realistic expectations is that I'll provide him a space and we'll, go take this journey together as far as it takes us. So, and I'm lucky enough to have 2 other daughters that will be able to have more independent lives and hopefully families of their own and such. But it's very interesting to be able to, I'm not sure how far apart yours are, Ashly. Ours, my oldest stepdaughter is 12 years apart from the younger ones, and what a difference 12 years makes in an individual, myself being that individual, and my perceptions and my mindset that I've discovered throughout parenting for 24 years now, and having been able to take those lessons, especially when it came to realizing with a nonverbal individual that there weren't these comply requirement, those types of things, that wasn't even a possible realistic expectation of this person. And so I think when I had to really, and my husband is a wonderful partner, and we've been just by each other's sides and have, successfully strategized throughout this journey. But I think that we finally are to a point where we see the with that difference of time, all that we did wrong. Now, with our third one, we're like, can't do any of those things again, and let's try all of these other strategies. So it's a day by day, moment by moment learning experience for us all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Diane, welcome. Any feedback on that, and obviously experience yourself, because I know kids can be really challenging and press our buttons.
They can. That's part of their job description. They actually get a piece of paper when they're born. They can't read it for a while, but it says, push your parents' buttons as much as possible. And most of them excel at it. So I think Sarah really hit the nail on the head. Like when I'm working with parents, the biggest thing that we try to do is just be flexible and learn from the experience. We can get so critical, right, of our parenting, and already we're set up in a situation when you have a child with challenging behavior, you're already set up to be working harder than a parent who maybe has a kid who doesn't have that behavior, right? It's like a 24/7 job instead of maybe like an 18/7 job or something like that. And so being flexible is just so important, and altering your expectations, not necessarily lowering them, but altering them. That helps a lot too, I think.
Yeah, it does. And obviously, as a man, and I think Nick can back us up on this, with our mental health as well, is because men don't have that so-called safe space to actually open up or just go away and just cry for about an hour at a time, saying, I can't freaking do this anymore. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to turn to. We become isolated a little bit, don't we? Nick?
Yes, I mean, so I work in schools, and I work a lot with SEND special needs children, and working with parents, I can see how the difference between like the father and the mother in the way they sort of cope with the challenges of having a SEND child. And one I supported a lot last year was a 9-year-old boy with autism and ADHD, and chatting to the parents, the way that the mother coped, or the challenges, and supported the child, and the father, very different. But I think it is that's the thing. I think it's about two things. It's like boundary setting and communications. And as a parent, with any child, sends or not sends, it's about setting those boundaries and obviously communicating, which can be harder with a sense child. I just want to touch on, like we actually say, a teenager. At the moment, I'm working in a behavioural unit at a secondary school, and so if any child's getting sort of excluded from class bad behaviour goes in this unit. And today I had 9 teenagers who are all testing the boundaries and pushing me, trying to get a reaction, and really challenging inappropriate, disrespectful behaviour. And it was like really how could I communicate to them and set the boundaries? And I think obviously it's not my own children, but I think the principles there are the same. How do it's those challenges. I think making sure the boundaries are clear and set, and communicating what's expected of them and how you can support them. But definitely a teenage child. I associate that Ashly today.
Yeah, well, we've got one. Obviously, he's not quite there yet, but he's heading there. Christine, you're a grandmother.
Yes.
So
I'm
what's
sorry?
the difference? You're like a grandparent.
Yes.
So what's the difference? And I've always wanted to know this. What's the difference in raising a child that's testing our boundaries compared to a grandchild?
You're dealing with 2 children, the parent and the grandchild. I mean, she's still my daughter, or whatever the situation is. She's still a child. She may be an adult child, but she's my child. And now I also have a grandchild, 2 grandchildren.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's difficult because not only is that child an adult, but she's a mom. She's a parent. He's a mom. He's a parent, or he's a dad and a parent. There's a lot of lack of communication between those parents. And then, of course, with grandma, it's very challenging. It got to a point where I said, for my own mental health, I'm going to raise these children, grandchildren, when they're with me the way I know best. And honestly, what I've noticed is that the parents of my grandchildren have adopted some of my ways, my thinking, just the things I say, the things I teach. But it was a long, slow process. I'm not saying I'm perfect and I'm not saying I'm right, but when you have two parents that are on opposite sides of how to discipline a child when they cross those boundaries, no, we can't put in timeout. We have to do timeout, or not spanking our child, but she needs to have her hand slapped. Which way do you go? If you've got parents at odds, what's a grandparent supposed to do?
Absolutely.
Can I step in, Adam, and answer and talk about that for
Go
a
for it.
second? Not only because I just recently became a grandma for my first time about 3 months ago. So very new, obviously, but also dealing with that same exact thing, Christine, the maturity level of the daughter, mother, and the distance already in the relationship, which has now, we thought maybe with the baby would create something different, but that's not the case. I think that it's gotten worse, maybe, or a little bit like more control has been tried to put on the relationship from that side, and so that's been really tough. And I don't know about for you too, but I think that, and I have been really thinking a lot about this and how to kind of approach it. And I mean, he's only 3 months old, so there's not a lot of behavior happening yet. But I think that ultimately, like the first step kind of is looking at the neuroscience of the brain development from birth to whatever age, toddler, 4 or 5, and understanding that process of the amygdala, the process of fight or flight, those processes of, well, what does my child understand at this time? What are the intentions? I was speaking to a family member and they just kept saying naughty, naughty, naughty. And I was kind of going, they're only 4. There's no intention. My definition of naughty would be with intention. And so it was hard. And I just kept thinking, and I looked it up, and, we start developing the skills for intention purpose making between 9 and 15. So you can't expect a 4-year-old to comply with naughty and nice and those types of things. They just don't have the capability. So I think that is a good place to start, with that understanding how the brain works. And of course, every individual is going to be vastly different.
Yeah,
Right.
I want to pick up on that as well. Obviously, Stephen's put, I find that patience is important. When I'm frustrated, silence is power. Mention the word patience to me, I switch off because I ain't got any. But obviously, we're raising 3 kids. One that's a 1-year-old who's already starting to press those buttons with his balls from his ball pit, because he now starts to pick them up and start throwing them all over the living room. But when it comes to clean up, he does do it to a degree. But it's the older two, 12 and 11. Obviously, the 12-year-old at that, obviously, he's got autism. I think he's got PDA as well. But he's also hormonal, which obviously it really tests your boundaries. So what do we do to obviously tackle that? Because their attitude's absolutely disgusting towards us.
Your children Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, I was just gonna say that's an interesting question because with my two grandchildren, they are 1.5 and 3.5. I'm pretty close to 4. She'll be 4 in December. And I try to point out to the parents that you can't, first of all, you can't have double standards. You can't say that it's okay for this one to have feelings and cry and scream and, yell at the top of her lungs. But then when he does it, because that's where he learned it from, you can't tell him, we don't scream. It has to be for both. You have to set those boundaries for both of them.
Yeah.
So my granddaughter picked up language, and I mean foul language, from my daughter. Okay. Now I can cuss way worse than sailors in proper situations. Okay. Or when it warrants it. Or if I'm telling my story of certain things that have happened in my life, it would warrant, okay, the company that I'm with. Okay. If I'm in church, I'm certainly not saying the F word. Okay. When my daughter obviously has, maybe not obvious, but my daughter also has the mouth of a sailor and then some. And I've seen her in situations where as much as she has wanted to, because she had done customer service, vet care, and as much as she may have wanted to curse at a client, she never does. Okay. She knows the difference between right and wrong. But when you're raising a child and you're not teaching the difference between right and wrong, and you're letting that language fly, but not teaching the child that it's not just joking, that words can hurt. I mean, let's be honest, words hurt. And especially in today's society, I'm not saying that everybody's soft. I'm not saying that, but words hurt. And when I hear words come from my granddaughter, one of the biggest things that they started when I first got here was there's a dog here that's 13, 14, 15 years old, German Shepherd. German Shepherds they've always have the history of bad hips, okay? She has a hard time getting up, hard time sitting down. And because my daughter would say, oh, you old bitch. What do you think my granddaughter picked up? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, my granddaughter's smart enough at 2.5, almost 3. She's 3.5, but when she was 2.5, 3, she realized that those words could hurt. So when she got mad at grandma for correcting a mistake, I see your eyes, Ashley.
I know where this is going. Right,
exactly. So, the first time that happened, I was like, whoa, no, ma'am. No. There's nothing wrong. I mean, I didn't say nothing. I backed away. And then I thought about it. I was like, this is my granddaughter. Now, given what I do for a living and what my advocacy is, okay, this ain't flying. It ain't flying. It's gotten to a point where, okay, you want to say it in front of mom and dad? Great. The other thing that she started picking up from my daughter, because this is just my daughter, shut the F up. So when my granddaughter gets she's hungry, she's tired. Sarah, I heard you or Ashley, you said it earlier. Are you hungry? Are you tired? Do you need to take a break? Do you need quiet time? Okay, I get all that. I've done all that. But when my granddaughter comes to me and says, out of pure spite and to be mean and to hurt, that's where you have to draw the line. You have to say enough is enough. And it's gotten to a point after so many months of grandmother. Now, I do not hit my grandchildren, okay? Yes, I may have done that to my children that are adults in their 30s now. That was a long time ago. I'm a different woman today than I was back then. I've broken plenty of wooden spoons over their asses, okay? But now today, because of the things that I've gone through and things that I've learned, I won't do that with my grandchildren, but I will sit her aside. I will put her in timeout. And then when she's done screaming and crying and kicking and carrying on, we have a conversation. We talk about it. Now I catch her if she gets in that mood where she's tired. Okay. Because she still takes naps. So if she starts to go, I'll look at her and I'll go, language. And she immediately stops. We've trained her. I've trained her brain to know that is not acceptable. It's just not acceptable in today's society. You want to say that when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, great. But at 3 years old, I just don't think it's appropriate. And Nick, if you deal with those kids on a daily basis, my prayers are to you, honey. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's about it's a bit like the old expression, carrot and stick. I think in life, everything we do has a consequence, and whether if you behave well, there's a consequence. Like it's often a reward, positive reward. If we act badly, there's a consequence. And I think it's trying to reinforce that balance, with children, that there's a consequence for their negative behavior, whether that consequence comes from us or other people's reactions. There's some sort of consequence, which is going to be a negative consequence, and that's why they shouldn't behave badly. But if they behave well, they get rewarded, in some way. If we behave well, there'll be people react positively in a simple way. People treat you nicely, and I think it's trying to, and this is through the children I work with, whether it's the teenagers, trying to tell them there's a consequence for their bad behavior. But there's a reward as well. Even going back to the child I supported last year, who had the ADHD and autism. Again, it was trying to give it a consequence, and one simple example is he really loved going to the sensory room, and so the consequence was if he behaved badly was he wouldn't go to sensory room that day. But the consequence of good behaviour was to remind him he could go and how good it was, and he could go for longer if it's good. So even just that simple thing had a massive difference in behaviour, because he related. He didn't want to miss out, but he wanted to go. So it's a simple consequence that he could relate to. But I think the whole thing, like you said, I think you always talk about it, Christine. It's how do you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what you do for potty training, right? Okay, you reward that good behavior. They went on the potty. They may not have been perfect. It may not have made it directly in the toilet, but you reward that good behavior.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's with anything, with any child, no matter what age he or she is. You have to and to teach that early. Sarah, you said that earlier about where that child's brain. So, I'm testing that theory with my granddaughter, being rewarded for those good things that she does. And a perfect example is one day last week, she was really, really nice to her younger brother, like really nice, like huggy and kissy and lovey and helpful. And, and I wanted to express to her and for her to understand that is good behavior. And I said, I think you might have earned a gummy. She loves gummies. Okay. I think you earned a gummy. Let's go get one. I mean, like the whole rest of the day then was like, like when she was potty training. Okay. You went number 2 on the potty. You earned a gummy. Yay. It's those little things I think that make a difference, and that help that child learn to be acceptable behavior in today's society.
Yeah, 100%. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Was going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, catch in the field of, behavior analysis, we talk about catch them being good, right? Like the instant you see her, and like you described, Christine, the instant that she's doing the thing that you want, that's when you give, the attention, the praise, to let them know that you're watching. Because a lot of times, I think one of the things that's sometimes hardest for me as a parent too is to pause and take a step back and not immediately react to what my kid does, to just sort of go, okay, what does this mean right now? Does it mean that she's tired, she's hungry, she needs a drink of water? Does it mean that she's getting sick? Does it mean that she had a bad day? Because those are, when I respond different, I'm going to respond differently to those things, right? Than I am to just thinking, if I've also had a stressful day, I'm more likely to start to take things personally, and things don't go well when I do that. I don't know, maybe it's just, it just doesn't at my house. I don't know. But, you know, and I think when we're talking about like parent mental health, that can be really hard to, like, you have to see it work a time or two before you're willing to keep trying it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I have to be able to see that if I pause and approach my kid with a neutral tone of voice, that is going to de-escalate the situation, right? And then that gives me also the reinforcement to be like, oh, I could do that again next time. It just gets really, everything is so tied up, you know, our mental health, how we were raised, how we parent, what we think our kid needs. It's probably a billion times different than, you know, growing up and raising grandchildren and then raising your own kids, right, Christine? And so,
you know, it's funny. Dr. Diane, I told a friend of mine the other day, I said she's expecting her second child, but there's 16 years between the first and second one. Okay. And her and I were talking, and I said, you know, we'd be so lucky if we could be grandparents as parents. That as a grandparent, we have so much more knowledge, experience, okay, because I raised my 3 kids. Here I am raising 2 more that made my grandchildren. You know, we have the knowledge, we have the experience, we have the patience, we know what works, what didn't work. We have the love that is so different than for our children. I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just a different type of love that we have for our grandchildren as opposed to our children. And you know, and you touched on it, Diane, about, so one of the things that I taught my granddaughter, when she gets frustrated very easily at everything. And when her little brother came along, it escalated. Okay. Oh, I mean, you could just see the frustration coming out and gritting her teeth and clenching your fists. So I taught her, and it took a little bit, not as long as I thought it would, but take a breath. Take a breath. And for her to actually go, that took a little bit of practice. Mm-hmm. And even earlier today, she was getting frustrated, not near as frustrated as she used to, but that little bit of frustration. And I looked at her, I said, take a breath. And without even thinking about it, she goes, and she did the actual inhale and blow. And it just immediately flipped everything. And yes, it affects not only her mental health, but mine as well, because now I'm not escalated. I'm taking that breath with her so that she can practice. One breath was all it took for her. And of course, the 1.5, he's now on to, 30 seconds later, he's on to something else. Okay. He don't care anymore. Yeah. But it's amazing how just that simple technique can alter everything. My mental health, their mental health, our environment, how the rest of the day goes. I mean, they're both down for a nap now, thank goodness. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just our mental health, whether it's a parent or grandparent, is greatly impacted if we allow it. And you just hit on it, Diane, that if we allow that, it can be plus or minus one way or the other.
I want to say I just learned this, and you'll get this completely, Christine, because I also am a podcaster. And so you learn so much from interviewing so many people. And a woman we were speaking about, she was a breathing specialist. And we talked about how breathing through your nose actually controls the nervous system. Mouth breathing can suggest to your body that you're in fight or flight and gasping for air. And so even just tweaking or adding that little extra step and making sure you're taking the deep breath through your nose and exhaling through your mouth, and it just creates your whole body's autonomy and nervous system to be taken down in that moment. And the same thing with my son, when we were teaching him at such a young age to take deep breaths. And I didn't know this other information then, but the moment that I heard him freaking out or one day and then go down to see him sitting and taking deep breaths, you just feel like, oh gosh, thank goodness. I'm so glad this practice has worked and it's, so much better for him. And he's 14 now, and it's necessary now that he takes advantage, and now it's easier for us to say it and him to do it right away because we've practiced since he was like 6. It's been a long time. So I think that it comes.
That's what I was going to say. But yes, it's a technique that she will learn and know and have for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
Without realizing that it's a technique. She'll just think it's habit, that it's okay, that she can, whether she's on a bus or in a car or at school or, out with friends, that she can just, excuse herself and just take that deep breath. Okay, guys, I'm ready to go. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. And that's what I want to pick up on, because we've all experienced some sort of trauma in our life, whether it's severe, whether it's minor, whether it's whatever. And I want to know is, comparing the trauma the parents have gone through because of the grandparents, and they've probably gone through trauma as well. But if the grandparents have put the parents through hell, shall I say, exposing them to being bullied, hitting them constantly, whatever, what sort of impact does that have on the parents towards their children?
It's a cycle, Adam. It's a cycle. I mean, I'm living proof of that. Okay. So
but it's a cycle if we choose to stay in that cycle.
Till it's recognized.
Yes.
Because I grew up in a very toxic, physically violent home with my grandparents, I did not know any better. Okay. And then my parents had me when they were 18 years old. Okay. They're young. They're basically children themselves. They didn't know any better. Between what my mother witnessed with her parents, what my father witnessed with his parents, his mother was a full-blown drunk. He would come home from school and she'd be passed out drunk. So he didn't know any better. It's a cycle, okay? He didn't recognize, because he grew up in it. He didn't recognize. And of course, back then in the 50s, none of this was talked about. So it's until you actually recognize that this is trauma, you can't deal with it. But once we do recognize it, then it becomes our choice and our responsibility to say, okay, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. This isn't the correct way. I need to heal. How do I fix my family? I can't fix my daughter. Okay. She's 33 years old, and she will be, until she's ready, a verbally abusive woman. That's who she is. I can't fix that till she recognizes it and says, okay. But what I can do is work with my granddaughter and ensure my grandson do not become abusive to their relationships in life.
Yeah.
So it's a cycle that needs to be broke without a doubt, but it can't be until it's fully recognized. Because as I said, I'm living proof of that. Living proof. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm a recovering drug addict. I've attempted suicide 6 times in my life. I've been in abusive relationships my whole life till the last one, which was, 6-7 years ago now. I was with him for 7, almost 8 years, and didn't realize till I got out that is not the correct way. By then I had 3 children. They were adults. I had 1 grandchild at the time. It wasn't until after I got out of that very last abusive relationship that I went, okay, shit needs to change. When you get shot in the head, you finally go, this ain't right. Something's got to give. Yeah. When you're attempting suicide 3 times with this man, you finally go, okay, something's wrong here. But it was a choice that I finally had to make, and it's not an easy one. It's not like, it's not like I woke up one day and went, okay, life's really good now. That's not how it works.
No.
Not how it works. because we still deal with, even though I'm away from him since 2018, the divorce was finalized in 2020. So, 4 or 6 years that I'm away from him. You don't think I still have triggers? Things that might set me off. My granddaughter slamming doors when I first got here, slamming the fuck out of doors. You don't think that was a trigger for me? Absolutely. And I thought I healed from it till it hit. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going crazy listening door slam. She's through 2.5 years old. She doesn't know what she's doing. This was something I had to heal from. And I didn't realize that was a trigger till it happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when you make a choice, when you finally go. Now, the man that did all this abuse to me, that shot me in the back of the head, that, beat me with a rubber mallet, he's still out there living. He's 62 years old and still has not made a choice to fix himself, to get better, to seek help, to seek counseling. He's been arrested since we've been separated. He's been arrested 3 times for abuse against a female. He has a choice. He chooses not to. He probably never will. I feel for the women he gets involved with, and I can't do anything other than what I'm doing and being a huge advocate for, to end abuse. It's the only thing I can do.
Yeah.
I can't deal with the guilt of, oh my gosh, there's other women out there that, what am I going to do? He's doing this to the, I can't do that. I'll drive myself crazy. Sorry, that's a stand. I really take a big stand.
No. Congrats for saying that. Congrats. Yeah. Obviously, the situation we're in at the minute it's having an impact on me, on my mental health as well, because when our kids come to us, ask our questions, to ask the school, for example, we normally get a response. But when our son, who's obviously a visual learner, he's a visual and practical learner, and obviously he's got a timetable, visual, brilliant, no problem, but they've changed it and they've not notified him or notified us about it. And he asked us about 3 weeks ago now, can you ask school to ask why the timetable keeps changing? So we did. We sent an email and we called. We've still not heard nothing. Still not heard a damn thing. Which has an impact on their mental health, which has an impact on our mental health. Because I feel like a shit parent because I want to give him this information. And because I can't, what kind of situation is that putting us in?
Adam, I got a question. Like, how do you think? Because you talk about sort of cycles and affect our experiences, our children. How do you feel your experiences, Adam, sort of affects how you support your children, or you see? I mean, I know you've got your own experiences when you were with your family. Do you think?
Well, I don't talk to my family, so that's a bonus. And obviously, it comes to a time now where my kids literally just walk right past my mum, like she's just a stranger in the street. So even they don't know her. Which obviously that's not our problem. But trauma-wise, I just feel like it's all a learning process, and we learn in our own time. And also, as Christine said, when we're willing to move forward and move on from that traumatic experience, shit's got to hit the. I can't remember what the word is, but we have to accept that it happened. We can't change all the abuse that happened, but now we're adults, we can change our responses to that, and that's what I'm doing externally by trying to support my kids the best I can.
Adam, can I ask how old is your son that's questioning the change in the time?
12.
12. Okay. So he's going to experience many more changes throughout his life.
Yeah.
Right. So, I would offer to exhaust every avenue possible
Oh, we have.
from walking into the school and saying, my son has a question regarding why it was changed. I've submitted emails, I've asked questions, I've called, I have not gotten an answer. Can we get an answer why this has happened? And use it as a learning lesson for your son. Listen, this would be me. I'm not saying that this would work for you, but this is how I would, if my granddaughter came to me at 12 and said, great, let's see if we can solve the problem, see if we can fix it. If not, use it as a learning lesson, because they're going to experience many changes in their lives from the tiniest little 1.5-year-old to my 33-year-old daughter. Okay.
Yeah,
As humans, we have to learn to adapt to the change that's happening around us. And that includes our kids. And I've always been an advocate, even when my children were little, to use it as a learning, teaching moment in a good, positive way. Yes, yes, I hit my kids with a wooden spoon, okay, because they pushed my damn buttons too much. But there were those many, many, many more learning opportunities for things that would happen at school, with friends,
I agree with you, Christy. I think it's how can you try and turn something, which happens, which is challenging or negative in a way, but how can you try and turn something positive in it? And it's hard to do that, but if you can learn from it or help your child learn, because like you say, Christine, inevitably the children are going to face challenges their whole life, because life is full of challenges. That's the reality of it. But if you can teach them, how can we learn? What do we learn from this? Sometimes it's a tough lesson, but it's like say, Christine, what can we?
Well, yeah, and you're right, Nick. As far as that, maybe there's something that you're missing, Adam, as far as helping him understand why it changed and what can we learn from this, and how can we maybe meld the two, what the old time change was, what the old time was, and what's the new one. Well, what can we do with that difference? Does it give us more reading time? Does it give us more coloring time? Does it give us more breakfast time? To try and meld so that it's not such a slap in the face, for lack of a better word, so that it's not such a punch in the gut that, this week it was this time. Now starting Monday, here it is Friday, starting Monday, we're going to do. That's a huge shift for children to accept, no matter what age. It's like the shift from going from elementary, we call it elementary school over here, first through, or kindergarten through 5th grade. And then they have a middle school, which is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and then high school, which is 9th through 12th. So that's a huge shift for children going from 5th grade in elementary school to that middle school, 6th grade. They're expected by the principals, the vice principals, the teachers, to be like, over the summer, they supposedly just, magically matured. Well, that's not the case for a child that's in 5th grade, not for every child. So it's a matter of finding that way to have that conversation. And it really does start with a conversation, to be able to say, listen, this is what happened. Let's see how we can adjust it. How can we work with it? How can we, like you said, Nick, how can we turn this into a positive? How can we find the bright side of this? What will work for you, meaning your son, Adam, to understand it and maybe come up with an alternative? Use it as a challenge. What can we do with this extra time or the shortness of time? What do we go to bed early? Do we wake up early?
We have a little plan at home called the backup plan. That's because my son loves computers. And so every time I say, or something happens, we say, well, it must be a backup file, or maybe we put it in a backup file and we choose to come back to it later, or maybe we can. So maybe find what his interests are and try to find a way to compare it through that, or it's worked so well, because there's changes when we're driving and he's expecting to go. There was one time in our lives where he would literally cry if we went one direction. We had to leave out our neighborhood only one direction for several months, if not a year, without having major meltdowns and not understanding what that meant. But it didn't matter. It's not like we still got out of the neighborhood. So why we accommodated it, we didn't make it, traumatic or upsetting for him. But it was now that he's a little bit older, we can make those, he has a little bit more understanding. When something happens, we can say, we need to make a backup plan. We need to make this into a backup file, and we can come back to it and talk about it later if we need to, or more than likely he'll just let it go after that point.
Yeah, well, what we did, because obviously he's got all these questions surrounding what's happening in that school, and even he's questioning why the school ain't talking to us, which obviously we're trying to get to the bottom of this. So what we actually did is we kept him off today. So he hasn't gone to school today, but he's done things that he enjoyed today rather than things he doesn't quite enjoy within the school. So that's a bonus. And normally he'd kick off about staying off school, but he was actually fine with it. So
I think it's also one of the things that you said, Adam, was like, how do I feel like a terrible parent because I can't answer these questions, right? Like, and then that's when like your parent brain just kind of goes down those old routes that you had from when you were growing up, and you're trying to create these new pathways. And one of the things that I think does kind of help is, you take a breath, you slow down, but also like, would I say that to my friend? Like if a friend of mine were sharing this story about themselves, would I say to them, I can't believe you did that. Like, how could you have possibly thought that would be a good idea? Like sometimes we have to like literally kind of step out and be like, this actually makes sense that I am frustrated right now. And it's okay that I'm frustrated. And like we've been saying, what do I learn from it? How do I move forward?
Yeah. Ashly, we've not heard from you for a while.
I'm just listening, as usual.
Of course you are.
Well, and I think too, when we look at, as we've talked about before, the school system in general, they want kids to learn in a cookie cutter manner, and not every kid learns that way. So when my kids, when we sit down to do school, I have to be myself very flexible with that, because in my mind, when we homeschool, and I do a lot of unschooling, if you will, so our school looks very different. I would rather my kids are learning by real life experience and more of that hands-on approach, because I've got 5 boys and 1 girl. They learn differently, and the boys especially are very active. So to get them to sit down to do a sheet of math or to do book work, they want nothing to do with it. They're like, no, I don't want to. So then I have to be, okay, well, how can we then get some sort of schooling done today without them necessarily realizing that they're doing school? So I have a kiddo that generally likes to cook. At least he did for a period of time. Now he makes his own meals if he really wants to. But okay, well, if you want to make cookies or you want to make XYZ, you have to read that recipe. You're doing your fractions, you're reading. So he's incorporating that in a real life skill and experience. And today I had to bring one of my kids to the orthodontist. So I said to him, okay, I want you to expand the chicken coop. And he tried throwing excuses at me. And I said, no, the tools for you to do it are in this shipping container. Go get them, expand it. By the time I got home, it was expanded. And his brother goes, well, he finally did something. Because he, as a kid, typically will throw out the excuses and want everybody else to do it for him. versus him taking the responsibility at 13, almost 14, to do it himself. So he did it today. And I was like, thank you for doing that. But it's really getting him to realize what path and what things are interesting to him. So if he doesn't have interest in something, he's going to buck it. He's not going to comply or have that desire to do that particular activity that's being requested of him. And I also find that there are, even with the younger kids, they are 6 to 13 right now. So with the younger ones, if I want them to do something, I have to partake in the activity with them. So it's really figuring out which kid can do that on their own and which kid needs a little more assistance. My daughter is very much a self-starter when she wants to be, but then she can reach that capacity of nothing is working, it's all going wrong, and then the dramatics happen, and I'm like, oh, I can't. My brain gets overstimulated, and I just have to walk away, but she doesn't let me walk away. She will continue to kick and scream and grab my arm and follow me and do all the things, and I just have to tune myself out into my own brain and just keep walking. And laugh, because if I don't laugh, I will freak out. And I think sometimes we just need to laugh to change the dynamic of the frustration and what is happening. A future actress, maybe. But I think when we can do that, it, like I said, it changes the dynamic of the frustration level when you can laugh. And sometimes it may not be a very funny situation, and it may completely blow the consistency of what you're trying to do. But if it calms you down and it settles everybody else down from their crazy, then just do that. So I have had a lot of situations where I've been so incredibly mad at my kids for misbehaving and wanted to yell at them, and I start laughing, and I'm like, well, this was pointless, because I can't keep that straight face because I'm literally just stewing inside. But I laugh and then I walk away.
Yeah, we haven't talked much about, like, laughter is obviously one of those powerful emotions to conquer stress, and yeah, but, I think that's a good point, Ashly. It's, if we could have sometimes have to laugh, even if it's like, it's I know my own son, when he like really misbehaves, I have to, sometimes I can laugh at, like, not at him, but like, as in, it's kind of ridiculous sometimes what he's doing. He knows it's wrong and he's doing it, and it's, he knows he's getting in trouble. So it's sort of, you have to sort of almost laugh as a way of, I think it's a good, it can be a coping mechanism. It's sort of, it's hard to do something, but I think actually, obviously, it's a beneficial emotion to feel if we can laugh in these situations. And that's a way of coping.
And sometimes it's so completely inappropriate, and I'm just like, if I don't laugh right now, I'm just gonna pull my lid. And then and then they start laughing, and they think it's funny. So then, if you're attempting that discipline, it's like, okay, this is just not working, and then you just chalk it up, and you're like, okay, maybe next time, and then you just walk away. Like, I can't right now. Peace.
Yeah, like I did.
Yeah. I don't know where Christine's gone. Are you still there?
I wonder if one of the kids woke up.
Probably.
And I, because I am a grandmother as well, I've got
Are you?
Yeah, I thought you knew that.
I didn't.
Yes, there is. I've got 2 grandsons. They live
like 45, right? But okay.
I was a grandma at 35. There's a story beyond that, okay? Anyway, but my 2 grandsons, one just turned a year and the other one is 3.5, almost 4. And when they were here in June, they didn't want mom to leave. So it was meltdown central. Okay, you're with grandma. Mom will be back. You will survive. You will be okay. Like, play. Trying to get them to do activity to take their mind off the fact that mom left for a brief period of time and she was coming back. But they didn't want anything to do with it. So it was, okay, give him space. He'll eventually warm up to the fact that he's here with grandma and his uncles and aunt. And he eventually settled down and was okay. But like you said, you parent your grandchildren a little bit differently, or you don't. It's really about how you want to read the situation. But I have raised my kids to always be very helpful when it comes to other children. And my 13-year-old will very much take the younger ones under his wing and let's play, let's do this. And he just scoops them up and tries to keep them distracted. And again, it doesn't always work. But then you find that the 1-year-old is like a Klingon. Like, nope, don't put me down. I just want you to hold me. So he will turn on the TV and again, do that distraction. And I once had somebody at church tell me, your kids are so polite, it makes me want to puke.
That's a compliment.
And I was like, I don't know if I should take that as a compliment or how I should really handle that. But thanks. I'm glad that they're polite and they better be, because if they're not, then we're going to have an issue. So if my kids raise a terror at home and can be themselves and be comfortable enough to have those outburst moments and those moments of I'm not going to be on my best behavior, but they are outside when they're around other people and they're out in public, I've done my job. Because I am raising contributing children to society who will ultimately be contributing adults to society. So I want them to have those values, those morals of, hey, you might be this way at home, but that's not how we're going to act in public. So you've got the mom eyes on you when you're in public. And if I hear otherwise, then we have an issue. So
I don't know how to respond to that.
I've made you silent 2 weeks in a row? Oh my gosh, I am winning.
Nick, please take over. Please take over.
I was thinking about how that kind of wraps back around. Like when even if you're like attempting to provide a consequence and it just goes totally south and your kids are just like, whatever, mom and dad, like, I don't really care. You know, if you can just model like what you're describing, Ashly, like being flexible. Well, that's not going to work out now. I guess we're going to try something different, and just lightening the mood, like laughing about it. Like that's how you slowly over time, over generations, begin to change those patterns that get so ingrained in us, right? And it's just, sometimes it feels like you're totally failing as a parent when you do that. But I guess I would argue that you're probably on a better track if you could pull that stuff off, you know?
Yeah. Well, my oldest had told me, because I was before he went into the military, I was like, it is my way or the highway. And if you don't like it, there's the door. Don't let it hit you on the rear end on the way out. Mm-hmm. And that is very much how I parent. But it helped him get through boot camp when he went into the Marine Corps. So when I got that first letter from him, when he could finally communicate back home, he's like, thank you for being so hard on me, because it allowed me to adapt to his drill instructors and all of the mind games that they play in the military when it comes to boot camp. So it was like I succeeded. Because there was one point in time I had told him we had gotten into, he had done something, I don't remember what it was, and I literally laid into him and he just stood there stone faced. But yet he had some emotion, and I told him, I said, if you can't handle me yelling at you, how are you going to handle a drill instructor in your face? That was what I had said. And he ultimately did what he was asked to do, but it created that sense of she really cares, and what she taught me and how she raised me will help me succeed in the future. And there's a lot of things that I don't let fly with my kids, but there's also some things that I've had to just let go of and get rid of that expectation. And it's difficult because you do, Adam, like you said, you feel like a crap parent most times, like, am I doing anything right? But when we see that fruit and we see what they become, because our oldest was a foster child and we later adopted him as an adult. That's how I became grandma at 35. But he is one of the very few success stories that happened out of all of the kids that he was in foster care with, that were within our agency. He's in the Marine Corps. He is a sergeant in the Marine Corps. He's getting ready to go into the Navy at some point after this enlistment. He's got 2 kids. He's married. Like, all of those things. And some of the other kids don't have that same success. So I think it becomes what we've instilled in him, how we parented him, just the differences in what we did for him.
Yeah. I think the final question to that is, what have we learned as parents ourselves compared to the traumatic kids we once were? What have we learned now? I'll start with Sarah.
Okay. Big one. Well, what have we learned? I guess my biggest 2 things that I love to say, and now that I know I can try to live by them, is that understand that all behavior is communication. And when we try to strategize and be curious of what that what the communication behind the behavior might be, we can have better chances of really getting to the root and helping, being just open and judgment free, and looking at, and it might have even been Diane that taught me this because she's amazing. But what kind of a relationship do I want to have with my child in 10 or 15 years, in 20 years? What does that look like? Do I want to have such a, controlling relationship with them now that then they don't want anything to do with me? Do I want to try to understand them now and see them for who they are and show them I believe in them, so that someday they'll know that I'm the safe person to come back to? Like, that's what I've learned in this 24 years and it's been a long lesson. And, one of our quotes that we say is, a little bit of knowledge will turn fear into understanding. So when you seek out knowledge for yourself or your children, you can dispel some of those fears and worries and move forward with better goals, and for all of your families.
Nick?
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is to not let my own experiences when I was being brought up, growing up, not let my negative experiences affect be passed down onto my sort of children, my son. And I think it's something we do almost subconsciously. And I've caught myself a couple of times just almost, a cynical view about something because of my experiences relating to it. I thought, well, I shouldn't be passing even a cynical view about something. So I think it's just, for me, my most important thing I've learned is to have that awareness. I think Christine touched on that awareness. I don't want my experiences to repeat themselves and be passed up a chain. I think when I talked about cat and stick and cut, I think really the most important thing is to motivate and inspire children if we can. And that's the most powerful thing with behaviour change. If we can, with my own son, is if I can, rather than passing on making aware of my negative experiences, try and actually inspire him, motivate him using my positive experiences. So those are two things for me.
Absolutely, Granny Ashly.
I think you're just a hoot, Adam. Anyway, I think, like Christine had touched on, I have the ability to break the cycle if I choose to. So if I don't want my children to be raised in the same toxicity that I was raised in, I'm going to do something different. And much like you, I don't have a close relationship with a lot of my family because I choose it that way. And that also means my kids don't have that close relationship like I had, when I was growing up. But I also recognize as an adult how that was toxic. And I have to listen to what my kids tell me, if you will, as far as what they're recognizing when they are in those situations. Are they recognizing that they're uncomfortable and they don't want to be in those types of situations? Then I need to respect how they're setting that boundary and just make that decision. Because obviously they're not going to verbalize it to somebody other than me because I'm their safe person. But I think being that safe person for your kids as well, letting them know, like, you can talk to me about anything. There's not going to be that judgment. Like, yes, we'll have a discussion about what you may have chosen to do or not do, but there's not going to be that judgment for that decision because we've all made stupid decisions. We've all made mistakes, and we guilt ourselves enough and shame ourselves enough. They don't need the added guilt and shame from somebody else. But it's the choice.
Absolutely. Christine. Here we go.
Well, what have I learned? I think the biggest thing is that my past does not define my future. The person that I was as a granddaughter back then, as a daughter, and even as a young mother, does not define who I am tomorrow. That is a choice that I make every single day when I wake up. Adam, I asked you this earlier. Who do I want to be for my grandchildren? I may not have had a full opportunity with my children when they were younger. Ashly, you've done an absolutely fabulous job with your children. That's clear. Congratulations. That is absolutely fabulous. That's the kind of parenting we need. Now, I may not have done that well as a young mom because I was 21 with my first child. I have that opportunity with my grandchildren. But I also have that choice with my daughter and my grandchildren's mother, with her through my actions, through my convictions, through my stand for my grandchildren. And what type of world do I want them to have? I don't want them full of trauma. I don't want them to have that trauma. I don't want them to have any of the bullshit that we went through. And that's who I am every single morning for them, every single day. That's what I've learned.
And finally, Dr. Diane.
Yes to all of the things. It's always easy to go last. I can just agree with y'all.
I should have actually last now.
But I think like the big take home for me, like in my everyday, in my house, is that I can keep trying. Like I can screw it up at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, and I can try again at 8:30 p.m. Like it doesn't have to be that's the way it's always going to be. It's not easy to keep trying, but it's worth it. It's worth what I want her to experience as different than what I experienced, you know.
Absolutely.
So keep trying.
Love that.
And I'll just agree with you all. There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks for everyone coming on. Please subscribe, everyone. Share shit out of this. Next week, we've got Nancy back. Finally, after she's been skiving for weeks. We're talking about families and traumatic events. I know Christine's going to be on that one. So, Ashly, behave yourself. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone. Good to meet
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care.